Okay, cool. What's up, man?
What's up, bro?
How's life? How's family life in Phuket? Wife and kids, and you got a 2-year-old now.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's
how's it treating
amazing.
you?
Yeah, this place is perfect for family life. It's slow. There's plenty of sidewalks, amazing access to the beach. It's one of those rare places in the world where, at least for me, everything I need is walking distance. And my daughter's really enjoying it. My wife's enjoying it. Everyone's feeling safe and grounded and plenty of sunshine, nice, healthy activities. So everything is good.
Is this a huge change for you in terms of lifestyle? You've played at the highest level of baseball in the major
Mhm.
leagues, and essentially that is a very selfish kind of task you have to have of you, right? You're trying to pursue a championship. You're trying to do what's best for the athlete, what's best for the team,
Mm.
and you might put aside things like family or others in that time just because you don't have the energy to focus on various things. So how was that transition from going to being a professional athlete and now being more altruistic in terms of, I got this little 2-year-old running around,
Mm.
I got a wife, and it's not about me anymore, it's about family. When was that transition for you?
Yeah, man. It's an interesting question because it's still something that I find myself like needing to adjust even now. Like you said, baseball was a very selfish existence. Your body, your performance, kind of everything else is on the side. And obviously, I still have goals with what I'm doing in the world. But when you have a wife and a baby, you've got to change that around a little bit. And I would say that now that I'm more grounded into this spiritual awakening, which we're about to get into, I'm doing a much better job. But even in that, when you find like your life's purpose is actually driven on, something for the world and also something that you would, you know, honestly be worth dying for, you have to make adjustments when you have a family. You can't just think about the mission. You can't just think about you. You have to expand past that. So I would say I'm doing a much better job over the last 8 months. So I'm stoked. Like I really like I'm here now in Thailand. We're doing this podcast and my family's, down the road. And I think they would be really happy to, see they've been really happy to see my progress.
So before we move forward and talk about a lot of the events that transpired for you to get to where you are today,
Mm,
let's go back and talk about your baseball career.
sure.
You played at the highest level, MLB. You won 2 World Series championships.
Yeah.
And talk us through that time when you were a player. And did you have any moments where you were introduced to religion, theology, Christ consciousness, any of it? Did that play a part in you as a person, as a player, your teammates, your lifestyle? Was there anything in that was resembling Yeshua
Mm.
or Jesus in that moment where you realized that there's something more to this game of life?
Yeah. So during my baseball career, there was a lot of moments where I witnessed arguments surrounding religion between friends, everyone on the same team, on the bus or in the locker room. And I was very, how do I say that? Yeah, I was like more of a witness to it all. I watched. I didn't speak. I didn't really get involved in the arguments, but I was curious. So I would listen and I had my own thoughts. I mean, I was never really a religious guy. I swore a lot of that off. And part of which is like, okay, every Sunday during the baseball season, they have chapel. So anybody who's into that can go inside there and, have like church because there's, not enough time. Well, I remember over the years, like watching the ways that some of my teammates were treating like their own wives, for example. A lot of cheating goes on. So I kind of would look around and like, wow, like the percentage of guys who are not being faithful walking into that room and coming out is high.
Mm,
Like that's hypocrisy. It's not
mm,
just about, you know, forgiveness of sins and like going into that room and not making an adjustment in your life. Like the evolution of a human is what I would see. So you kind of want to get past that. But I definitely felt the spiritual bypassing of religion, taking Jesus' story, the dying for the sin story. And I saw it, and it never really vibrated with me. Now, I didn't really know what that really meant. In recent days, actually, my mom has sent me through a bunch of photos from my baseball career, of different things I was doing for cancer patients and stuff. So I'm like, okay, like it was there, even though it was like a selfish, career, you had to have that. There were still moments where I wanted to give back. So it kind of was something, I guess, that was building in my subconscious without me really knowing what it would all mean later.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned hypocrisy. We'll come back to that in a second. But before we touch on that, talk us through your story, your personal story, your personal relationship with Yeshua. I know it means a lot to you, maybe everything to you, and how you live your life today. So talk us through the moment you realize that baseball is perhaps coming to an end. Your career is coming to an end. When was that moment, first of all? And what was your identity around that? Okay, this is the thing that I've placed my identity around for my entire life.
Yeah.
And this is who I am. And I'm getting respect and recognition based off of this particular thing. But that particular thing is now coming to an end.
Sure.
So was there a moment you realized this? And when that moment transpired, did you have another plan in place? Or was it you're stepping into this dark place now of the unknown of what the heck am I going to do?
Sure.
Who am I going to be? Who am I without baseball? So talk us through that transition of the identity shift you had, the moment you had to, let's say, drop the gloves down.
Sure, yeah.
Glove down, let's say, and move on with your life, even though you didn't know the next few steps.
Sure. Yeah, so that moment was one of the most difficult of my life. I had 14 orthopedic surgeries during this career, so I was kind of forced into this retirement, and I had no plan. I remember one of my friends in baseball even asking, like, what are you going to do after? Like, he kind of knew, had this feeling that I was going to have a tough time. And I remember after that retirement, crying for no reason, hands trembling. It's like a death, like that identity is dying and you have no idea what to do.
Did you want to keep playing at that moment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was clear that I had talent. It was just the problem was the injuries. And I wanted to play, but I had exhausted my right knee to a point where like I didn't even have cartilage left. The pain was too high. And I said, you know what? I'm good. Like it's not going to work anymore. But so it was like that transition pain. So I remember very early after that, a couple suicidal thoughts here or there. And then in my mind, it was, okay, I have to try something new. So there was the Pilates degree, which really helped me to find power in that I could do something else. And I had been introduced to psychedelic drugs prior to this. So during this Pilates degree, kind of making moves into something new, I was experimenting quite a bit with psychedelics. And I got to this point where I had, overdone it a bit. 8 weekends in a row of LSD will put you somewhere really, really far out. Now, it was a few days after the last weekend that I had with this where I was sitting in my house and I felt I had this feeling like I was Jesus. It was me. Like I'm back. And it was like, whoa, like it was this really big, thing to think about. It was really far out.
First time having this?
Yeah, okay. First time. First out of 3.
Okay.
And yeah, so, I wanted to help the world. I wanted to save the world, right? Like that's what you would imagine. That's the story. Jesus comes back and he saves the world. Okay, so whatever. So now I go and tell some of my friends about this, that, I'm Jesus. And, much love to all the people who were involved. They were scared. It was something that is very unique to say out loud. And essentially, I was tricked into a psychiatric ward in San Francisco. Now, we could get into all the stories that transpired after this, but it was a very confusing moment to my reality. I didn't want to, when you get tricked into a psych ward, they call it a 5150, which means you're a harm to yourself or other people. And I just wanted to help people. Maybe I was being reckless a little bit with my money. I think I took out like $5,000 in cash, and I was giving cash to homeless people on the street. So yeah, my behavior was radical. It was different. It was too much for sure. It was a little alarming. So like I said, kudos to them. Much love. But yeah, coming out of that experience where you're having, nurses check on you every 15 minutes throughout the night to make sure you're not going to kill yourself. You're like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would I be here? I just want to help people. So that was the first of 3 Christ consciousness awakenings. Mm-hmm. So I guess we can kind of skip through till now, because it's been about a 6-year, it's been a 6-year journey. And I had the most recent Christ consciousness awakening back in January. Now, what I can say is, like, I'm not there's a lot of people actually, now that I find out, who have had this sort of feeling and have expressed it as, I am Jesus. Now, none of us are Jesus. Yeshua died a long time ago. He left a lot of lessons in an energy, a really big energy here on earth. And I think that when people say, I am Jesus, what they are really saying is, I'm connecting to the divine without a religion, without a third party, without anybody to get in the way. And it gets expressed that way. And I think personally, between the MK Ultra CIA experiments and society, nobody can really understand what that really means. Like, there's not a mental, or a psychological center for people who get connected that way, expressing, I am Jesus. It's all, he's insane. He needs to go into a mental institute. There is not that place for people to take that download and bring it into reality. And I believe there should be. I think that would be huge for society, because it's a really big thing to come across. So for me, now that we're 7 years later and the last 8 months, I've realized, okay, like, if you feel like you love Yeshua and you want to honor the man, walk like him. Go out there and serve people. Go out in the world, spend time with people who are really struggling. So I've been, Cairo, Egypt, Jordan, Africa. I'm headed to India soon, America, on the streets, wherever I go, even here in Thailand, I serve people. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot about the world. You learn a lot about people. And this Christ, Yeshua or Jesus, he infused a way of being here on earth that is, it's uncomfortable. It's weird for a lot of people to take that in. So that's kind of the gist of it. Obviously, there's a lot of details over the last 7 years, a lot of hardship, depression. Ended up in multiple mental hospitals trying to make my way through it. And now with a wife and a kid and a business in Indonesia and living all over the world, I feel like I'm doing a really good job of harnessing the energy and using it for good in humanity.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking back at this, when
Sure.
your life events that transpired, and the chaos, the uncertainty, and the rising of this Christ consciousness, do you feel like there are many other people like you who are repressed in expressing it because of fear of what happened to you? Oh, you're crazy and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, okay, I don't want that backlash, so I'm going to repress this energy and not tell anyone. And the second part to that question is, if, I guess the what ifs are always interesting. If Yeshua is here in today's day and age, in today's environment, and then now we get into the hypocrisy, what would Yeshua do versus what are traditional Christians avoid doing in that sense? Is there a dissonance in terms of their preaching and actions, or are they doing the quote unquote right thing if Yeshua was walking the face of the planet 2025? You know?
All right, so we'll start with the first one. Yes, I know a lot of people who have either said I am Jesus or I am God or I'm something very radical. And like I said, I believe that the MK Ultra CIA experiments kind of understood that these psychedelic drugs were going to wake people up to their own divinity, and they don't want that. They don't want free spirits. The more people that they suppress into this, get them into a psych ward, have them buying pharmaceutical drugs, have that wheel turning, suppressing that connection to divinity and what humans are really capable of, the better, right? You have a lot of sheep following the herd, doing what they're told. And so, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people right now that have had similar experiences who are scared to speak out. And I understand it's a weird thing to speak out about, but I'm here hopefully to help those people understand. And yeah, also I think there are people out there that are also free. They haven't been in the psych ward, and I believe that this will kind of lead into the next question. I believe that Christ consciousness is pretty specific. I don't think like we're all one. I don't think it's about going to, parties and doing more psychedelic drugs and just cuddle puddles and all of that. I believe Christ consciously chose to be of service to the least of these. I believe that he spoke up for the least of these. I believe that he was living for something worth dying for, which obviously happened because he spoke out against oppression. He saw the hypocrisy in religion at the time, and he said something about it, and he paid the ultimate price. Now, Christianity today. Do we really need the Vatican? Do we really need a pope? Do we really need cardinals? I say no. I think we need service. I think we need people like, Jesus was specific in the Bible, the book that the Vatican follows, that says, don't have treasures here on earth. Well, the entire ceiling is lined with gold. Everything is fancy. It's big buildings. It's this, that. Well, in Africa, all of those metals that are lining those buildings could potentially be coming from subhuman working conditions, slave-like human conditions of kids and women, and not to mention men. It doesn't really matter at that stage. And I've been to Africa. I've talked to those people. I know what's going on. So when you show up and you embody the Christ consciousness and you show up like Yeshua would, which is what I believe the universe asked me to do, you see right through the veil. You see through the hypocrisy. You see through the lies. And quite frankly, I'm tired of it.
Do you think this hypocrisy is possibly that I don't know, or is it I know, yet I'm trying not to look at it? You know what I'm saying? Like someone's wearing the jewelry. Do they really know where it's coming from? Or is it that I don't even know where this is being made and how it's being made? Like you said, on it's blood money, or coming from kids making this in harsh conditions.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's human conditioning. I think it's comfort. I think the way that the Jesus story has been told is, you have a guy who died for your sins. So everything that Jesus did in his life has already been done for you to be comfortable. Now, I think that's not what really happened. I think that's other people. First of all, we know the Bible. There's a lot of good stuff in the Bible, and then there, in my opinion, is a lot of spiritual bypass scripture in there. So you have these stories not written by Jesus himself, 30 to 60 years after he was already gone. So, I mean, you take that and you think, okay, only men wrote this. They wrote it in, under Roman occupation. And we know what kind of corruption is here today. It was still there. Sorry, like the Roman Empire is the same as the American Empire. It's just different time. So yeah, I do have a lot of compassion for Christians as well, because I feel like, they're kind of being duped in many ways, which is sad. This is not what we want. We want people who are, we need to get back to the true essence of Yeshua and Jesus. Like I believe if we really want to change the world, the more of us that awaken to this knowledge, the more of us that stand up, speak out, take action, we could do some stuff here on earth.
Now, before we get to how do we connect with this consciousness, this Christ consciousness, I want to talk about how we see this transpire in almost all religions. I think the Vatican, they make a ton of money, and the second most institution that makes a lot of money is this place in India called Tirupati, from donations, from, I don't know how much money they make, but they make a ton of it. And we still see a lot of poverty, a lot of kids not being fed. And recently, I think 2 years ago, they built another temple. I don't know how many $1 million this one costs, but right outside, there's a kid who's asking for some food right in front of the temple that they just spent millions and millions of dollars. So, this idea that we're going to delegate our responsibilities as human beings to this hope for God coming to save us is not just in one religion, right? It's kind of like in every religion.
Yep.
And so my question to you is, coming back to this, how does an individual tap into this Christ, Yeshua, Krishna, whatever consciousness you want to put, whatever word is in front of it you want to put, but how can we take responsibility and raise this collective consciousness individually rather than delegating this task to the aforementioned God coming to save us through some kind of hope?
Yeah, I don't like the word hope. I don't like this word. I mean, I would think that, speaking to you and speaking to my other friends, especially, getting into India a little bit, I heard stories that very similar to Christianity, where you have people like fighting to get in line to speak to maybe the leader of one of these temples. And you actually have people wishing ill will, praying for ill will on others, donating huge amount of funds to build more temples. We don't need more churches. We don't need more temples. We need people who can see that. So it starts with an awareness, right? Like it starts with the awareness of like, all right, well, maybe that guy's right. Maybe we do need to stop giving those funds to build more temples and take these finances that you were ready to disperse, in some cases could be $1 million plus, and take myself, me. Because Jesus, you don't see him being like, like asking others to really do much for him. He was doing it himself. So you take your whatever means you can and you invert what you're doing. You have to wake up to it with awareness and then take those funds and maybe go start a program for the less fortunate to get educated. Like right now I'm doing triage work, feeding people on the street. I don't know if it's the ultimate answer, but because I don't have those sort of big funds. But if you did, imagine really wealthy people who are into these religions realizing like, oh, wow, like I can be just like Jesus. I can be just like Krishna. I could be like these guys. Like I don't need this middleman. Like again, religion is a business. And the sooner that we make human beings our business instead of religion, through individual action and talking about it and changing the consciousness and one ripple after the other, the more we can do.
So you've traveled quite a bit, quite extensively.
Yeah.
You grew up in the U.S., first world country, Hollywood, everything, right? Like you got the plan, the American dream. Then you've seen Africa, and Egypt, I believe, and various other countries. So can you talk a little bit about the awareness, the consciousness in the West, in America, let's say, versus what's actually going on in these other countries and what their mindset, what's the mindset of an African person in terms of when they see poverty, is it the same eyes that see poverty from a Westerner's standpoint, or is it different? And what do they have in terms of expectations of someone else trying to help them in terms of acceptance of life, of a limited amount of food supply, and gratitude also. Because I always see these African tribes, a lot of times they don't have much, but they're kicking around an old soccer ball with a big smile on their face sometimes. They're dancing around the fire. Westerners are on a lot of antidepressants right now, and they're numbing themselves. What's happening? We have a wealthy nation that's depressed as hell, and we have another nation that doesn't have resources and money, but they have a tremendous amount of gratitude towards whatever they do have, which might be very little in terms of material possessions. So they might have something that's deeper than that we can probably learn from as Westerners. So what is your learning experience, let's say, as a Westerner traveling to these other countries? And, what can you tell the rest of us of how that experience is?
Yeah, so the way that I would say, I've said this a couple of times, I feel like the West has a lot to learn from Africa, and Africa has a lot to learn from the West. I mean, that's mutual benefit, and it comes from like a very balanced place, right? So yeah, like what I've noticed in Africa is everyone's kind of willing to help each other out. They don't have much, but they will help each other even with the little that they have. And you can see, like, it's a community. People are out on the streets walking around. It's always like this. And then when you go to the West, in America, like I remember recently I was in Texas, and like you're walking down with these, obviously really nice houses. Nobody's outside. It's really quiet. You can almost hear a pin drop. And I believe that a lot of the West is kind of lacking that, like, I'm going to get out there and like help other people out. I think we've gotten so conditioned to be consumers that we forget about community and helping. And it's, one of those things where I understand it's conditioning. Well, if you really you want to start feeling better in your life, do something different. Go help somebody in America like the Africans are doing for each other all the time. And I bet you your spirit will be lifted, and antidepressants would be used less and less and less. So, that's what I have to say about that.
Being altruistic actually feels a lot better than being selfish, right? And I'm sure as a father of a 2-year-old, you can explain this to those people who don't have kids of how the joy is when you have something and you're playing with your kid, and it's not about you anymore. It's about this other little person that brings joy into their life. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, what's gonna, like you said, community in Africa. So what's gonna bring community and this sense of collective responsibility for Westerners? What's gonna unite them? Is it gonna be religion? Is it gonna be a collective movement? Is it going to be possibly this consciousness raising, but again, in a sort of collective way of we can all do this together rather than I'm on my own and I gotta, you're on your own. And the division in politics, as you see right now, the division in opinions of what's going on in Gaza or Ukraine. And this is also dividing us even more in just talking about these things, which is interesting. It's like we're forgetting about the people, though. We're divided on many other aspects of this topic, but we're forgetting about the substance of, have you forgotten love? Have you forgotten compassion? Have you forgotten humanity? Of like, well, that's a person, at the end of the day, besides the labels of a Muslim, a Christian, a Hindu. So my question is, what could you possibly, sell in terms of collective and community, an idea, a movement, a branding that we can put on top of the Western ideology in terms of bringing us all together? Do you have a sort of recommendation that the West could possibly even listen to if their ears and eyes are awake? Or is it that itself that, they're not even listening?
Oh, wow. Well, I think speaking about Africa, one of the things I think the West has to understand is that, Apple, Tesla, NVIDIA, Microsoft, all of these cameras have cobalt inside of them. Like everything, computers, cell phones, everything that we have innovated the world with to have this access to be able to use social media and speak out comes from blood. It comes from slave-like conditions for people in Africa. So the more we can be aware of this, because obviously it's here, so we should use it to stand up for those sort of people. For me, that's like one of the most, that's number one, is the awareness of it. And then when it comes to, okay, well, in the United States and the UK, places like this, it's mostly Christian, right? Well, if we can take out the religion and connect to Jesus, only Jesus, the person, right? Because a personal story is like the most universal story. So if Americans looked at what, American innovation has done, not to mention the Native American Indians, right? The people our ancestors who made America came on ships with the Bible and took all these people's land to build everything that we are. And if we could connect back to, it's not our fault today, right? All of us who are born today, we do have our hands off of that. But if we have our hands off of it and we choose not to fight for that change in the future, then you might as well be compliant, right? So connecting to Jesus' heart, like what would Jesus do? Like really, that's like one of the oldest sayings there is. There's bracelets. What would Jesus do? Well, if Jesus knew all of this, he would take a stand and realize the Republican and Democratic Party don't mean anything. Humans mean everything, Jesus said the kingdom of God is within us. So if we treat each other like a kingdom and we forget about all the other noise that clearly the system is trying to do, we could make a change. I don't really know the concrete, boycott this company, boycott that company, which could be the way. But we don't need any more tech innovation. We need humanity innovation. And it's very clear that humans are capable of most anything that we put our minds to. We are an amazing technology. We're this being that gets born, through this creation, this magic. And then we have we have to sleep, but we would have a battery for 100 years, and minds and thinking and evolution and innovation and ideas, we could actually change things. But we have to be open to it first. And we also have to be willing to be uncomfortable and stand up and do things that are not in our normal routine. That's what I know for sure. In my life is really uncomfortable a lot of times. I'm sacrificing time with my family. I've slept on a highway in Africa, not even a joke, after visiting an orphanage. So sometimes I find myself in uncomfortable situations, but my spirit is higher than ever because, it's funny because I also have kind of lost a lot of money in my life, but I'm happier now than I was then because I'm serving something greater than me, something I'm willing to die for. And the more of us that kind of get to that place, I think we'll feel better and we will make change.
So I want to get into service and
Sure.
some of the actions you post on Instagram and talking about that. But before we get into that, I want to talk about your experience with psychedelics played a huge role in your life.
Sure.
Do you feel as though that is an option, or do you think that's, let's say, something that someone else should do in terms of awakening their spirit and reconnecting with Yeshua and Christ consciousness? Or do you feel like that was just personal to you, and for someone else, maybe the path could be a different option?
Yeah, I think there could be different options. I think that psychedelics, at least in a more of a guided state and also less frequent, like me, because that's one of the things I noticed. It feels like it's happening a lot is people are doing the psychedelics a lot, and I think that the biggest thing that you can learn from psychedelics is that we are all a part of this one creation. We're all actually one. So after that, it's how do we integrate that and bring it into humanity, into the three dimensions, and service is in my opinion, is the greatest. I talked to my AI like recently about potentially doing DMT, and a lot of my friends who have used DMT will say like, you realize you're all like, we're all one. It's all one. Well, when you are of service, when you are a man of privilege, and then you take that privilege and try and disperse it, like you're walking DMT. So, but I would say like in most cases, yeah, psychedelics would be awesome. I think our world leaders all need to do something like now. Like really, like right now, like it just transcends the religious, the politics, and you really realize like there's no countries or borders and stuff. Like, yeah, we might all look a little bit different, but underneath the skin, we all have the same organs. We all bleed red. Like, come on, let's wake up.
Speaking of which, so you post on your Instagram quite frequently about action because you're very big on action.
Yeah.
And you like to call out hypocrisy when you see people who talk about action and say you should do something, yet they themselves don't do it. So they're preaching. And what I want to know from you is, why do you do what you do? You know, I understand it's the art of giving something, giving a little piece of bread to someone's hungry. It means a lot, you know, and people discount that, especially people who are blessed with having 3 meals a day, having food. They don't understand what it's like. And you see a lot of mental illness in the U.S. where these people say, well, get a job. And these people are not capable of doing any kind of job because they're mentally ill. They're addicted to drugs. So do you have a level of compassion to someone who chooses to do, let's say, drugs and avoids hard work? Because a lot of people will say such things, right? Well, that individual on the street should stop the drugs and go and work some kind of job. Is it that easy, or is it something far deeper than that? Do you feel a sense of, you know what, we can't just discount them because they chose the wrong path? You know, we all do something bad. They have made a series of decisions that led them to the streets, and now they're in a dark place. And I know you always bring it back to, what would Yeshua do? So I ask you this question, you know, what would Yeshua do, or what would you do in that situation of, well, you find a person and feeling a sense of gratitude or compassion or love is something that they haven't experienced in a very long time. People kind of brush them off as the scum of society. So why do you do what you do, and why do you post it on Instagram?
Yeah, so why I do what I do is, number one, I love to give back. It makes me feel amazing. I've had a lot of privilege, and I have that privilege still to give back. So when you connect to Yeshua and you just think about like simple acts of kindness, prayers in action, and it's also a bit strategic in ways I've realized, because I've served in many countries where, like I said, I don't really see countries or borders or anything. Like, it's a message of love is why I'm doing it. That love can transcend pretty much all things. I mean, I've gone into gang neighborhoods in Africa at 3 a.m. Yeah, I had a security guard, but there was way more kids on the street, part of a gang, than there was security. So if things were to go wrong, they were going to go wrong, and I could.
How did they treat you in that situation? Were you threatened?
Well, I wasn't threatened. I felt a lot of desperation from them, but also they saw that there was a man who was there to help. That's in love, and when you do that, you can go places that the society or the system, politicians are going to say, that's not going to work. Well, it does work because of love. So why I'm not always that comfortable with filming my actions. In some ways, like I catch some heat about this. People, that's like that's probably the only negative comment that I'll hear on social media is like, you don't need to film it. Well, it's like I feel like, yeah, we do, because we've almost forgot what Yeshua or Jesus would be doing if he was here. Like he wouldn't just be talking about it, online. He would be doing it. So for me to speak out against hypocrisy and the things that I stand for, which even though it might come off as tough love, like it's still, I still love those people, maybe in like a lot of ways, like I've already mentioned. It's human conditioning. That's why they can't see it. It's been hammered into people's DNA that, you grow up, you're a Christian and Jesus died for your sins and this and that. And also the system doesn't really allow you a lot of time for reflection. Especially in America, I was just there. Like, it was so expensive. People are just struggling to like pay their bills or, get food. So it's hard for them to take introspection and think about deep things. Whereas like I've had that moment. So yeah, when I see somebody really struggling on the street, yeah, of course, like I'm sure they could have made better decisions, but like once you get under the shoe of the system, it's really hard to push it off. There's paying for an apartment in these certain places that you find homeless people, like how are they going to do that if they don't have like the system is like really focused on them and always trying to evolve. Like I spoke to a few of those guys on the streets of Austin, and they'll tell you that the programs that they have and the places for them reminds them of prison. So that means, and they've said something about it. So like if they're reminded of prison in the place that's supposed to help them get their life together, how do you think that's going to go? It's not going to go well. They're just going to end up back on the street. They're not going to be doing well. They're going to struggle. And it's going to be like this forever. Like, you don't hear on the news President Trump and these guys talking about how they're developing these really amazing, innovative programs to help the people that have the least in our country, which is what Jesus would be doing. No, you hear about how we can make more millionaires and innovate, and Apple investing this much money. Like, you're missing the point if you're a follower of Jesus. You completely missed it.
It's really funny that people come and attack you for posting videos and helping people, yet online nudity and pornography is everywhere, and they get so much attention and people celebrate it. And we're in this society now where you're celebrated for talking about degeneracy, for celebrating about being pro-war,
Sure.
all these sort of things that get clicks, entertainment. Yet when someone's doing a kind deed, people have something to say, a pushback on that. So my question to you is our direction towards unconditional love, is that been corrupted? Because now we see things like, well, we don't even have the ability to pair bond anymore, like form relationships, connections. Young kids today can't even make eye contact with each other. And now when you post something about having love and compassion for an individual who is very challenged, and you're trying to show people, hey, look, this is our human side coming to the forefront, and it feels good to give. It feels good to be seen as a receiver, as, hey, I'm a human being. I'm one of you. We're the same. Just because of certain situations, I end up here and you end up here. It could be 1 degree off, one bad mistake, and you could go down the chain of events. So, in terms of all of this, where would Yeshua guide us in terms of unconditional love, in terms of what to avoid? All these distractions, the media pushing us in a certain way, as you mentioned, there's so much going on in the West because they control all the media and they're corrupting our minds. We have to use technology today, and the overabundance of misinformation, of conditioning, of subliminal messaging.
Sure.
You have a kid, so that's another thing, right? Like, she's going to grow up seeing all this stuff. Do you keep it away from her? Do you tell her do you show her the right path in terms of leadership, in terms of this is what love and compassion looks like, and I want you to embody it and spread it, in other ways possible. So how do you traverse this plane of love and compassion in today's environment when we're so corrupted with all the wrong things and negativity and dark energy? Is it a battle? Is it something you say, no, let's just move away from it? What are the options we have?
So let's be clear. We're in a spiritual war. This is war when it comes to the mind, right? Like, I think a lot of people disregard that sort of thing, but like, unless you are fighting a war for your country, don't call it a war. Well, no, it's a war, obviously. I mean, the more that humans get conditioned to connection on the cell phones or the tablets, this is just another disconnect from what would be possible in unconditional love, which is like eye contact, human connection. Like that's where it all begins. So for us, you know, my daughter's 2.5, and she helped clean up the beach with us yesterday, and she loved it. Like it's natural for children, the innocence of that connection to a spirit like Yeshua. Like she wants to help. When, I explained to her, like one of the things I do here in Thailand is I grab plastic bags, I fill it with the water, some soup, some snack, and I go around and give it out to the gardeners around the Laguna who are, working for very little money. And I think that the more that we can just emphasize kindness, compassion, connection through the noise. And if I really had a wish, right? If I really had a wish, well, I would love for, on Sundays or, on Sundays, instead of going to church, could you imagine all that energy going into walking into the church every Sunday and handing money to a church? Could you imagine if that same energy came out of the church and went onto the streets and people started giving? And yeah, maybe posting about it, maybe not, but like flooding the internet with action in compassion and kindness and Yeshua-like vibrations. I think it would make a huge impact. So it's a hard world to navigate, but right now that's what I would say.
Now, with all that you just said, and you said it's a spiritual war, are you someone who believes in the Gnostic teachings by any chance? Do you think that the Gnostics were right in the terms of Yaldabaoth, the archons? Do you think it's all contrived in the sense that this was all planned in some sort of way to take us away from that divine Sophia? Or is it a human accident that we came across technology, and technology has, like you said, now we're looking at the screens instead of looking at each other? So what is your idea? Is this all like some kind of, concoction of, well, the guys at the top are planning something out, and they have their own agenda, and that doesn't go with Yeshua or Divine Sophia or this Gnostic idea. So do you agree with the Gnostics in a sense? Do you have a different version of it? What is your take on all of this?
Yeah, so I'm like mildly familiar with the Gnostic texts. What I feel like is I believe there's a control group at the top who wants to disconnect us from, the light of Yeshua. Like when there's light, there's dark. And I believe that, I hate to say this, but I also feel like money is the root of all evil. I've thought about this a lot. Now, of course, you can do good with money, but it feels like the amount of money being used for making money or greed or, that sort of thing far outweighs the money that's going into the light. So like, it's hard for me to see it any other way. So, but I also feel like potentially there is some sort of divine plan for humanity to awaken. It's coming soon. In my own life, speaking about my own life and the way that everything has worked, like I always thought my life was this ginormous mess. It's like, I made a ton of mistakes, did this wrong, did that wrong, blah, 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 on and on. And then over this last 8 months, I almost felt like, oh my God, maybe I never even had a choice at all. It almost feel like this was all written for me in my personal journey to wake up to this consciousness right now, go through the psych wards, see the system for what it is so that I could help be a beacon of light. And obviously we have a ton of technology, so a lot of things can be documented so deeply that, yeah, it feels like maybe we are meant to go through all of this darkness for a future that is going to be actually really cool. That's what I hope, at least. And I believe it, because if I don't believe it, I'm a human frequency. You're a human frequency. I don't know, like I do a ton of meditation. I do a lot of praying now, writing. I believe that those vibrations do actually make an impact in our world and in forces far greater than we can understand. So we'll see.
Are you someone that's a believer in karma, or the Hindu version of karma, that reincarnation and something along those lines, where you're taking rebirth as another individual, or is it something that
10-minute warning.
okay? Yeah, let's talk about this, and I want to move into
Sure.
a little bit of your daily practices, practical things that people can do. But before we get into that, what are your thoughts on karma? Do you believe in it? Do you think it's just some kind of theory or theosophy that the Hindus had that's not relevant today? What do you think about that?
Well, it's hard for me to fully believe in karma, at least during like one lifetime, because I see like a lot of people that to me feel very evil, like living in abundance, having a pretty nice life, existence, like just kind of going against, in my opinion, what would be karmic forces. What I would say, like for me, is yeah, I'm not like huge into karma, but for me, I know that like the more good I do, the better I feel. So maybe it's karmic internally, at least in my vibration. I haven't really checked, like I've gone back and forth on that. I would say that I don't really know, which is a part of like the bigger picture. Like even when it comes to what people, we haven't even said, I don't think we've said the word God today. I think that's the first time. Like I don't know what really exists, and I'm okay with that. The mystery is beautiful, but it feels like there is some like beautiful architecture of some mysterious creation that is hard to explain. And we're just learning as we go, like it's all an improv life. So we don't really know what's going on.
Getting used to the unknown, right? Getting used to walking in that unknown darkness and going either way. And about the spiritual war, I feel like, what's the other option? We have, the only option is to fight, isn't it? Like what's the alternative to that? Do we just lay our arms down and, this is the prayer thing of like,
Yeah.
well, we submit. And I guess, I was going to ask you about the disclosure project going on in the U.S., but we got to keep that for another time.
Yeah,
Your thoughts on that, and how, if things transpire, what directions, there's several directions this can go. But let's leave that for another time. I want to ask you now, moving forward, the next couple months, the next couple years, do you have a certain idea of what you would like to accomplish in terms of, helping people?
Sure.
Do you have certain countries you're looking at in terms of building some kind of infrastructure to where you can help individuals? What's your plan moving forward for these, just the next couple months or a couple years?
Yeah. So I guess my plans over the next couple of months is just continue that message, getting on podcasts more and more like this, talking about what I'm doing, potentially starting a movement of where like we get groups of people going around. But eventually, of course, I would love to. I do have a few business ideas of my own, which are coming slowly. I'll keep them for another time. But yeah, I mean, I would love to make enough money personally so that I can actually start going from emergency feeding help to creating sustainable programs for people to come through, really care about the individual, and they have them go into society and be able to like make for themselves whatever they want, a business, this and that. But yeah, I mean, like another huge goal of mine, my name, Ryan, Ryan. Well, my uncle once said, resilient youth awakens nobility. So by living out this message and living it out long enough, awaken people to, in a lot of ways, we got the Yeshua message wrong. And it would be noble to completely shift the way that people are doing things. If you are somebody with mega wealth, 100, 200 millions of dollars and going upward, like take a big piece of that and let's work together and let's do something to like really impact the world and be radical, because it is going to take a bit of radical leap to really connect back to Yeshua and what he really wanted. So yeah, it's a message, a movement, business. I'm kind of moving in multiple directions, and I don't really know where it all leads, but I find that to be fun. It's like childlike. So we'll see where it all leads.
Well, why don't we just end on this one? Lastly, to the people listening who want to walk the path of Yeshua, who want to awaken this Christ consciousness, who believe it's there, they've tapped into it, and they're awakening it, and they acknowledge it in themselves. What message do you have for these people who, as we talked about earlier on, that they might be a little skeptical or a little scared of speaking out because of repercussions from people around them? So do you have a message for these people listening?
Yeah, I would say number one is go serve the least of these. If you want to connect to Yeshua, get out there, whether that's going and bringing meals to people on the streets, going to a food kitchen, doing something. And whether you film that or not, at least talk about it on the airwaves. We all have platforms now, and people sometimes think like what their voice can mean nothing because they're not famous. Well, if you believe that, you won't ever make a change. So that would be my goal for them. And then secondly, when it comes to something that, standing up for people online, talking about shaky subjects, you don't have to do them all, but like maybe choose one or two things where you see some hypocrisy and you walk through that fear, because that's the other thing. I could imagine Yeshua had fear at some point. Like he had loved ones. There's talk that he had children. Obviously that's kind of left out for now, but when you do step up into that world, you are going to have fear and it is going to feel uncomfortable. But when you go out there and serve the least of these, you will lift your own spirit and you will serve yourself just as much as them. And then when you walk through that fear of putting something online that might be controversial, you're going to have some fear. But on the back end, like you might connect to someone to help you to spread that and find your team, find your clique. So that would be my advice for today's episode.
Well, Ryan Kalish, thank you so much for having this conversation. I feel like it was very enlightening and very moving. I think the viewers, the listeners can get a message of, okay, they feel empowered after listening to such a conversation. And we have so much more to talk about another time, disclosure stuff and your various travels and some stuff that you had in the past that, maybe another time we can dive a little deeper into those things. But for today, I think that was a great episode and pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks for having me on. Much love.